shiresociety.com. More New Hampshire news and muse from your friend and humble narrator at ridleyreport.com. New Hampshire State Rep and Free Stater Mark Warden of Goffstown, I think, has this to report. Quote, fellow porcupines, we have a record number of porks running for state rep this year. The candidates can really use your help to stand at the polls on September 8th and November 3rd to hold signs, unquote. So, Free Staters, as you may already know, are people who moved to New Hampshire for more freedom. He refers to them as porks in this email or Facebook post. Porks is short for porcupines. So he continues, quote, we have voting stations all over the state. Please help. Send me a PM if you can spend a few hours on election day, and I'll point you to a Liberty candidate near you, unquote. So a record number of porcupines would mean, again, these are libertarians running for state office. A record number running would probably indicate about 50 or 60 people, maybe. Normally, we manage to get about 15 through the gauntlet each election. Every 2 years for state rep and state senate offices. So that would indicate that it's probably normal to have about 40 running. My numbers may be slightly on the high end, if I had to guess. But it's great to see an increase in people putting their hats in the ring. When I ran in 2008 for state rep, reluctantly, I kind of got roped into it. I had sort of made a promise that I would run under very narrow circumstances, and sure enough, someone heard about that and held me to it. But I only spent $2 on it. It took about 5-10 hours of labor. I didn't campaign. I ran in a Democrat ward as a Republican just to make sure that the Republican ballot was actually filled completely. I thought this might have a chance of getting one of the other Republicans in, which would be an improvement on the Democrats. Here in New Hampshire, the Republicans actually are Republicans, and they really are different from the Democrats. They do actually, pretty consistently, most of them vote more for freedom than the Democrats do. It's not like at the national level where you just have two different sets of bad guys. You can't tell which one's worse. We've done the statistics and tracking for a long period of time now in New Hampshire, 15 years roughly. Actually, I think it may be more like 17 years, because we've been tracking it since well before the Free State. Since as soon as the Free Staters picked New Hampshire, the tracking began almost immediately. Tracking everyone's voting record, and yeah, it turned out that it's very rare to find a Democrat who is more pro-freedom than the least pro-freedom Republican. I should say it's somewhat rare. So anyway, that's one reason I ran as a Republican. The other is because Ron Paul, and Rand Paul operate in the Republican Party. They seem to be the most effective liberty politicians. Justin Amash. We are finally getting some Democrats, that have pro-freedom leanings again. Like that one who was shot down in his airliner back around 1983. I sure hope they don't do that to Tulsi Gabbard, because despite her crappy positions on some things, I really do like her. Hopefully she's a sign of things to come. But anyway, that run in 08, I think was definitely worth the time and trouble. And I went through, in some ways, more trouble than most people would, because I had to fight to get on the ballot. I can't remember the exact details, but a Democrat actually came to my assistance on this. But one of the reasons I found it to be worthwhile is that it wound up, when they found out that I'd won the primary, which again is the point I'm trying to make, it's really easy to win your primaries usually as state rep in New Hampshire. So if you've got 50 people running, then it's likely that most of them, the vast majority, will get through their primaries for state rep. Since I won my primary in 2008, although I lost in the general election, by about 4%, despite doing nothing, it was worth it because my win of the primary it gave me voting powers on the Manchester Republican Committee, and that enabled me to go to this well, I would have been able to go anyway, I guess, but I went to a Manchester Republican meeting. I was able to see an epic rant by the late State Rep Steve Valancourt against Tammy Simmons, another state rep, for endorsing a bunch of people who weren't him. She was actually a pretty pro-freedom guy. I don't understand why she wasn't in favor of him. But anyway, it gave me the chance to vote Tammy on. I think it was Tammy. I voted 2 pro-freedom people onto the Manchester Republican Committee. Mine was the deciding vote in both cases. So it did have this positive long-term outcome. I think no, it wasn't Tammy. It was Mark Warden, and I probably voted for Tammy, but I got Mark Warden and Natalie Mitchell, I think is her last name, elected to the MRC, and they were both pro-freedom. So again, mine was the deciding vote. But I don't think I'm going to run for state rep again ever in New Hampshire, just because I know I can't be signing. If I were elected, I wouldn't be able to take office because I would not be willing to take an oath to the U.S. Constitution. I'm a little reluctant even to take an oath to the New Hampshire Constitution, because although it's pretty good, you never know if there might be something in there that you wind up not being able to actually follow through on. Of course, imagine how little attention Democrats are paying to this sort of thing. They take an oath to the New Hampshire Constitution and don't even pretend to follow it. In many cases, not all. And when was the last time you heard a state rep say, yeah, I can't vote for that because there was this oath that I took? No, they never say that. They never think it, apparently. It never comes up. I guess there would be some value in getting elected and then trying to take your seat without taking the oath, or taking a modified version of the oath and getting it on camera and having them lose their minds. There'd be some value in that, but again, the people would have voted for you, and then the election would just sort of fall to the Democrat, or something like that would happen. Whereas if you just stayed out of it, maybe it would have fallen to a somewhat freedom-friendly Republican. I don't know. Boris Yeltsin achieved a lot of his changes in the Soviet Union through the Communist Party, right? You know, that was his vector for getting to a point where he could actually enact meaningful freedom reforms. Ron Paul, like I said, and Rand Paul have been able to get more done than me by operating through the Republican Party, and more done than you if you're operating through the Libertarian Party. So I think there's just a case to be made for using existing systems, even if that might not be always the best vector for me. There's times where I'll use them, just like Yeltsin and the Pauls have done. Speaking of which, remember how I did a video a while back, or a podcast, saying, the Pauls, it needs to be like a TV docudrama series, right? Those people have led, especially Rand Paul, have been leading such interesting lives. And I was saying that before Rand Paul was apparently surrounded by belligerent, potentially violent demonstrators the other day in Washington. Sort of a French Revolution type moment. Now, I don't appreciate his reaction to this, calling for an FBI investigation. I don't think he should be using taxpayer money to protect himself. On the other hand, taxpayer money should not be used to stop senators from carrying firearms if they want to. I bet he's not allowed to be armed while he's down there in that cesspool, that swamp. Anyway, it seems like I have seen some uptick, because of the Reopen NH type activities. It seems like I've seen some people running, more people running for state rep, some activity. The turnout was apparently pretty high at the primary on September 8th, which is 2 days ago as of this read. I'm reading this on September 10th. But there's just an overall uptick in activity, so the fact that we're getting more active does not mean that we're going to do better than usual. Joe Kelly Levasseur, I think he's kind of a neocon who holds office in Manchester. He's a Republican, and he's usually on the board of aldermen. He's best known for his sort of his epic rants, and he likes to wander the town of Manchester taking pictures of homeless people. But I think there's some usefulness in that, and he's often an interesting source of sort of citizen news, even though he's not just a citizen anymore. But he writes this on Facebook, quote, "Breaking news, 564 student drop in enrollment in Manchester City schools this year. If this number holds, the superintendent states they will have to lay off teachers. Superintendent stated that remote learning is hurting the district, and if it continues, then it will hurt even more. Congratulations to all the parents that went out and found alternatives to public schools in Manchester," unquote. Okay, well that was definitely a pro-liberty message. That was not a neocon message. Anyway, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that dropping student enrollments forced superintendents to lay people off. I thought they just increased hiring when they needed fewer people. But okay, good. By the way, I did want to report that, you can actually now begin believing the claims that COVID is a threat. Now we have confirmation because I finally know someone who's had it. And if I'm your only trusted source of information, then now you can join the COVID bandwagon. So yes, I had two relatives, both came down with it. A relative and an in-law, husband-wife team, didn't find out about it till it was all over. Apparently they just, it was like a little bit of a cold for them, and then got tested, and it was just they didn't even announce it or anything like that. But I just found out about it through the family grapevine. So congrats to them, Purple Heart. Of course, this assumes that the testing is accurate, or that maybe they didn't really even have it, and the test is just saying that they did. Who knows? That's a possibility, considering how crappy the U.S. testing is. With them refusing the international test and all that, and having to make their own crappy one instead. That's how it was done in the U.S. Kind of an echo of the flying coffin of 1918, that U.S. designed aircraft that was apparently designed to get U.S. pilots killed because they weren't willing to fly babies or Newports or SE-5s. They had to make their own. Oh, a baby is a Newport. Never mind. Sorry. I was repeating myself. Those two. That was just another name for a Newport. But anyway, I think they may have stopped flying the babies by 1918. But anyway, the Josiah Bartlett Center for Public Policy in New Hampshire is reporting, quote, "Study estimates NH cost of Green New Deal at more than $74,000 per household in first year." 2 weeks after a supporter of the Green New Deal won the New Hampshire primary, a new study finds that paying for only a few of the Green New Deal's largest mandates would cost the median New Hampshire household more than its entire annual income in the first year of implementation. Unquote. So they go on to quote an expert. The expert says, quote, "The Green New Deal is a politically motivated policy that will saddle households with exorbitant costs and wreck our economy," said Kent Lassman, president of the Competitive Enterprise Institute and co-author of the study. "Our analysis shows that, if implemented, the Green New Deal would cost New Hampshire households more than $75,000 in just the first year alone. Perhaps that's why exactly 0 Senate Democrats, including Senators Jean Shaheen and Maggie Hassan, voted for the Green New Deal when they had the chance." Unquote. I don't even know what the Green New Deal is. It's probably some new federal scheme. Yes, it's likely that they'll take this thing and pare it down to where it's just damaging as opposed to unpassable or unenforceable. Well, maybe the COVID thing will wipe some of that stuff off the map. Although, there are real environmental challenges that do need to be addressed. No, they don't need to be addressed with taxpayer dollars. Nothing does. But, isn't it interesting how environmental considerations have just immediately, no one's talking about it, it's gone out the window. You should sit in your car all the time and leave it running. You should, when you stand in line, you should be sitting in your car, actually, and it should be idling. We should block the roads and create huge traffic jams that are just pollution-generating machines so that some people can vote from their cars. Everything's COVID, COVID, COVID. Nothing else matters. Oh, until one day, that gets thrown out the window, too, because there was a protest that all the COVID people agreed with. One day, all the lockdown people saw that some people were protesting who they agreed with, so they just forgot about all the restrictions, except for maybe some social distancing and some mask wearing. But no, that's where the spike came from, right? Was these Black Lives Matter protests, which, it's important to be able to protest, but that's where the spike happened, not the reopen protests. And yet all these Karens suddenly forgot they were Karens. It kind of reminds me of that political cartoon, where all those leftists in Germany were losing their minds over the presence of U.S. nuclear weapons, which I can understand. On the other hand, there was this political cartoon, and it showed, this giant nuclear weapon, armed at and aiming at Germany from the east, and they were just staring at it. Okay, look at that, isn't that? And then the Americans bring up one that's much smaller, and the Germans look over at the Americans and they say, "You warmongers." This was back in the 1980s, so it's kind of the same way with these liberals. They're so hypocritical. Even though, again, I think the Black Lives protests were, largely justified, and the grievance is certainly real and shared by me. Well, the grievance of black folks being killed. I don't think black folks not being allowed to wear their BLM swag to work at a private company, I don't think that's a grievance. And that seems to be what it's degenerating into. Or reparations or stuff like that. That's bunk. But anyway, all these movements seem to degenerate. The Tea Party degenerated before them, and the Occupy Wall Street degenerated. Even the Free State Project has degenerated in some ways. Certainly their state reps, have sometimes voted for really questionable stuff. Some of them have. Moving on to other news. Quote, libertarians gather on Wednesday to file ballot access petition. Concord, New Hampshire, August 31st, 2020. Libertarian candidates will gather on Wednesday, September 2nd, to rally and file petitions for ballot access. On July 22nd, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire announced that it had secured a reduced ballot access petition requirement in a court ruling by Judge LaPlante. At Wednesday's events, candidates will file the balance of the requirement with Secretary of State Bill Gardner at the State House. Thanks to the hard work of candidates, their staff, party volunteers, and activists, Libertarian candidates will again appear on the ballot from the presidential ticket down to state representative candidates. LPNH extends its gratitude to our attorney, John Meyer, for securing a favorable ruling. The party recommends that attendees take precautions in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and that individuals assess their own risk when deciding to attend. Expected at Wednesday's event are the following candidates. Daryl, it would take too long to read that list. Unquote. It would take too long to read that list. Yeah. Okay, so it says you can... That was a... I think that was posted by the Libertarian Party. I don't remember exactly which person. I guess it may have been Richard Manzo, because that person is listed as the contact. So, again, some more thoughts regarding these Libertarian Party runs. I will publicize the Libertarian Party when they do something, if it's even vaguely interesting or they come under attack. And just the fact that they're out there will result in either they come under attack or, they suffer blockages that the mainstream parties don't. And it can be useful for illustrating just how crappy the system is in the U.S. and what a duopoly it is, how controlled it is. On the other hand, look at all the effort these people are expending on just what are they getting out of any of this? You know, they get a little bit of free publicity from me. Occasionally they'll get some from the mainstream press. Free Talk Live will probably talk about it if we're talking about just New Hampshire. You know, but they have to deploy an attorney. You know, how much did they have to spend on that? If they didn't have to spend money on that, then he's doing pro bono stuff for them that could be used probably more effectively. Good on John Meyer for doing something pro-liberty. He does that a lot. I hope I'm saying his name right, by the way. It may be Mayer. But anyway, you know, the system is designed to absorb and dissipate libertarian efforts within the political system through the Libertarian Party. If you're doing some politics, if you're doing politics, you're probably better off just operating through one of the two major parties. You will, yes, of course, they will try to control you, and you'll get some pushback from them from inside. But that's nothing compared to the type of suppression they can do to you if you're running as a libertarian. They can keep you from having any chance of winning or getting publicity, probably. They won't even have to do anything. It just happens by itself, right? So most Libertarian Party efforts, I think, the amount of effort that I see being put into it probably would achieve the same results with less effort if you did it outside the Libertarian Party. But as long as they're doing stuff, you know, I'm going to at least take advantage of that to give them that free publicity. And it gives me a chance to undermine confidence in the government's mainstream system, the existing system. You know, if the Libertarian Party path were an effective path toward more freedom, then we would see slight, we would see slight, at least slight improvements in their performance. And I guess we sort of have. I mean, if you measure it over this 40-year period that it's been going on, we have a 40-year period that we've had Libertarian Party presidential candidates. I think they may have managed, maybe in the last election, to do slightly better than the 1980 run. Mostly it was downhill for the first 30 years. I don't know, it's not much better than flat, if it's better at all. So, you know, if you're not seeing improvements, you're probably wasting your time and should be doing something else. You know, it seems like a Libertarian Party run is just enough of a restriction to keep you from doing anything interesting, but not enough of a restriction to give you a chance of winning, right? Maybe you would feel like you had some restrictions by running as a Republican or Democrat, but then you've got a chance of winning. And you know, having run as a Republican, I didn't sense any restrictions at all. And I was sitting there right in front of all of them. None of them even walked up to me to complain. Not even about one of my positions. Any of my positions, which ran directly contrary to the Republican platform. So I don't know. I just didn't feel like the path is actually fairly open if you operate through the mainstream parties. And if they do come down on you, kind of like Caleb Dyer had the Republicans kind of crapping on him when he was in the GOP as a state rep. He's a liberty activist in New Hampshire. I don't know if he's a free stater or not. So he switched over to the Libertarian Party. And this was interesting. Again, this is one of the few interesting things that the Libertarian Party ever does. He switched while he was in office. So, you know, he was able to be in office as a Libertarian Party member. And I think we had 3 Libertarian Party state reps around that time. But of course, all 3 of them got wiped out during the next election after changing their party affiliation. They couldn't win as incumbents. And the things that happened to Caleb Dyer were interesting, right? I mean, there was no reason why he couldn't get video of them. If the Republican Party was giving him grief, why didn't he get video of it and put it on YouTube? Someone messing with you, that's convertible into political capital, right? You can create a buzz around that stuff. Getting attacked is how the Free Staters do half their cool stuff, or maybe not half of it, but 25% of the cool stuff Free Staters do is a result of them getting attacked, or it is the attack itself. Like Gandhi supposedly said, you know, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, then you win. You want that. But the Libertarian Party is so ineffective, it's not even worth attacking. And so, it doesn't generate publicity. Speaking of organizations that are good at generating publicity and doing stuff efficiently, let's talk about Reopen NH. So, I was talking earlier about all these primary elections. Well, I'm already getting better data from Reopen NH than I am from the Free Staters regarding how they've done in the elections. So the September 8th primary, they have posted an update, quote, winning! 88% of endorsed candidates advanced. Even with election day voter suppression, 88% of endorsed candidates win election. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because of your efforts Tuesday, 88% of our endorsed candidates advanced to the general election, proving that our cause is worth fighting for. We want to extend a special thanks to you, Karen Testerman, who ran an amazing sprint in under 90 days to capture 10% of the Republican primary vote for governor. For a campaign run, a shoestring budget in such a short time, this is a major success and sends a powerful message. Of special note, Executive Counselor Dave Wheeler crushed Senator Bob Clegg in a 62% to 38% head-to-head primary decision in Executive Council District 5. Clegg was the prime sponsor of HB 1461, 2002, the bill that became RSA 4:45. That is the law that has allowed the governor to assume the role of the legislature by passing new policy in the form of emergency orders. Unquote. So apparently they ran 115 candidates, 101 of them won their primaries. But again, as I was indicating at the beginning of this video, it's normal for a state rep candidate to win their primary. It would be, you would expect a result similar to this. I think the Free Staters get results similar to this in their primaries. It's the general elections that are the hard part. They also said, quote, we heard stories from several sources of voters walking away without voting and of voters having to jump over all kinds of unconstitutional hurdles to cast ballots during this primary election, and this issue needs to be addressed immediately. If you personally experienced this or know of someone who did, please do 3 things. You can go to, unquote, you can go to reopennh.com to learn more or post your concerns. They have a Facebook group, so you can do that there too. And I think that was written by Andrew Manus, who's the chairman of reopennh.com, and he is also a Free Stater. Former state rep. I think, well, he could be a sitting state rep, but I think he's a former state rep. And I have met him. Ridley out. ridleyreport.com.
The old world is collapsing, and it's going to take its slave driver governments with it. But what will rise up in their place? In New Hampshire, the Shire Society has a plan, a thriving web forum, and a history of action.
He didn't take long to come up with a plan.
You can sign up right now at shiresociety.com.